open the council meeting for the 29th of August. Remembering we are being live streamed, and we'll start with our karakia.
Whakatakatahau ki te tonga. Kia mā uta, kia mā tātara ki tai. Atakura, he tio, he huka. Māori order. Go to Paralympians.
Thank you. We've got no apologies. We've got Councillor Trellin online. Morning, Josh. Obviously, we've got Councillor Johnson, who is an automatic and doesn't need to be seconded. So we've got our public forum this morning, and we're going to welcome up Kathy and her team first. You ladies have got 10 minutes. They're from the Porirua Health and Safety City Trust.
Right. Good morning. My name's Kathy, and I'm the manager of the Porirua Healthy Safer City Trust. With me, I have my colleague Geraldine. She's the one that actually does all the hard work out on the streets, and our chairperson Lynn Renoff. The trust has been, and I'm here really today to tell you a little bit about the trust as we contract to the council and have done since 2008, but not many people probably know about us or have heard about us, so it's sort of letting you know who we are and why we're here. The trust was started in 1993, and it has it was initiated through the Prime Minister's Office and Police and that to help with crime prevention in the city. We've grown to lots of other different things since then. We, under that umbrella when we first started off, was the police offered to house us because we didn't have any officers or anything like that. So over the years we've moved many police bases. I've been involved with the trust since 2015 and took over from Jenny Lester, who some people might remember. Big boots to fill that one. And I've been in 4 police bases in that time as they've slowly closed them around the city, and I now work from home. So, yeah, so that's where we're at there. We have a big, because we don't have our own premises, we've actually got a container which we rent a space off a friend up in Mungavin Avenue where all our gear's stored, paints and all of that type of stuff. So we sort of jolting floats between my home office and the container and out on the road. We do fly under the radar, mainly because we don't have a website and we don't have any social media presence. But people do find out about us and know about us through word of mouth, probably more than anything else. Our contract gives us sort of a license to do quite a few different things within the city. So we support the police, for example, and we've been doing this since 2016 with their youth mentoring programs, and we also we've actually taken on, we work with them for the Cactus, try and get sponsorship, blah, blah, blah. We don't participate in the actual program itself. It's a bit too much for either of us, I think. It's an 8-week program and trying to give them some self-belief. And it's run at Porirua College at this stage and has been for a number of years. Lots of other colleges in the area would like the police to do the Cactus program. Currently, probably about 16K to do for each session that we do it. So, yeah, people can't find the money. So we're still with Porirua College. We've also, in the last 12 months, we have been working hard to update our trust deed, work through new health and safety policies, our ER documents to make sure that we're doing best practice, that we've got good and strong, robust policies in place, and it's something that, we have to do every few years. It's still a work in progress, and we haven't quite got to the end of that yet, but we will be doing. So we also do things like I said, we're a word of mouth where people hear about us. So we connect a lot of people. People might ring me and say, I've got this happening, do you know who I need to talk to or see or whatever? So we're a bit of connection like that. We've worked with Fire and Emergency New Zealand in some of their campaigns. They did a huge smoke alarm campaign a few years ago, and Phil asked me if could I put it out among our networks that they were offering free smoke alarms, and there was a bit of a form on that to fill in. I said, yeah, sure. So I put it all out there. Someone very kindly put it on Facebook, and a few days later Phil rang me and said, can you take that off Facebook because we just can't cope? And it was like, once it's out there, I can't do much about it. So I think that year they put in about 600 smoke alarms throughout Porirua City, which is a very cool thing. But he also rings me when they have sort of excess things available. So not long ago they donated 8 beds, I think, to Women's Refuge because they were buying new beds and that sort of stuff. What else? How long have I got to go?
We're into 5 minutes.
Oh, right, okay, because she's going to talk next. Yeah, right. So, lastly, what I'd like to say is that the contract that we have with council, we really appreciate that, and a lot of what we do, like I said, people don't know about. What I really want to do in the last, in particular the 12 months, Sam Tyler and Pete Barton, who are sitting behind me, who manage our contract, have been really great supporters for us and have really helped us to get where we are. And somebody else that I really want to thank who's not here, is Bill Inge. He's done amazing stuff for us, and we've been involved in a lot of the murals, all sorts of things around the city because of Bill, and he's helped, support keeping us going. And Claire Giblin is another one that we've done some work for throughout as well. So, thank you very much to all of those people. So thank you very much for listening to us, and now I'm going to hand it over to Geraldine.
Right. Hi. I've been part of this for 18 months. When I started, we had a nice little black van. As you can see, I'm a pink girl. I'm the pink lady is what people see out there. We have upgraded to a newer, bigger van, so get more stuff in there. 2023 stats, so lots of tags, lots of meterage, lots of money. Tag location, so we work from War Place in Kenepuru through Porirua, out to Patanui and up to Pukura Bay. Victims, obviously the council, Wellington Electricity, residential properties, more Wilsons because of the stream banking, and the same with Berry Mixted, which is the Linden cricket pitch. Suburbs, Kenepuru, again, that's because of the stream banks, Cannons Creek, all of the alleyways, Titahi Bay, all sorts out that way. Property types, alleyways. We have over 200 alleyways and walkways that we look after. Commercial buildings, mainly out in Kenepuru. Public, the bridges and underpasses, Mungavin, tunnel, roundabouts, always up there, as I can see this morning as well. Wellington Electricity, public footpaths. We get good feedback when we do residential properties. The one at the top is the entrance into Whitireia Park. Still looks good, and that was nearly a year ago. 2024 stats, 1,100 odd tags to 2,500 square metres. Locations again, mainly Cannons Creek, which is given, I suppose. Victims still at the top of the council. Thompson Property Group, because they have Mega Centre and other properties around here. What are we doing? Top suburbs, Cannons Creek. Time. Commercial buildings, top properties there. Litter. Now that I have a system with the graffiti and I'm keeping on top of it, part of our contract was litter, which wasn't too much of an issue. I didn't look after it too well in the first 12 months, but we've been getting better, so that means we make more time for picking up litter, and there's lots of it. We work with Ngāti Toa, so we helped them out when the old police station got tagged. And when people ring us, we do things quite quickly. Barbara Edmonds' office was done one night and we cleaned it up the next day, so they were very happy about that. Lots of hot spots, Mungavin Roundabout, Streambank, Cricket Pitch, Bullock Lane, Mega Centre. I live in Cannons Creek, so I'm always on top of that, and I just like to keep my city beautiful. Mungavin Roundabout, if you guys are going around there, it's always been done. And so the quicker I get it off, the better I feel, and it works. I have had comments from businesses who didn't think that by removing it quickly it would work, but it does, and he's happy about that. What else have I got? That's basically it.
Well done.
Well done, ladies. Any questions for the ladies? Yes, Ross.
Just a question. So, with Wellington funding, I know council provides a fair amount of funding. Do you get funding from Wellington Electricity and?
They get charged for the work that we do for them, and so does the Thompson Property Group.
Mega Centre.
Yeah, the Mega Centre, yeah. So that's sort of it's not, the work that we do for them is not enough to, to keep you going, but it adds to the coffers.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Ollie.
Thank you. Those businesses in Cannons Creek, do they contribute to the graffiti that you clean off their properties? No, didn't think so.
Mike.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a conflict of interest. I'm part of the trust, do a magnificent job. I sit at the meetings and I'm just astounded at what they actually get through. And Geraldine, your work's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, ladies. We do. We appreciate all the work you do. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
You can leave if you don't want to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting. Okay, Mark, you're up next. You can both come, sorry.
Thank you.
If you just introduce yourselves and then take it away, you got 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Mark Madams and this is my business partner Alan Shanks. We're investors in Porirua City and commercial buildings, and of recent we have just done a development up in Elsdon, which is the Elsdon Business Park, which we put 86 units in up there. What we'd like to discuss and with council and see if there's any pushback is how the rates are working up there for the industrial sheds. Up there, a 50 square metre shed is $7,500 for a storage shed. It has a toilet and a sink in it. And a house in Whitby with 3 bathrooms and 3 toilets is $8,000. We just can't see how things equate. And we're getting pushback from owners. It's making it virtually impossible for us to lease or sell. And we sort of don't know really where to go from here and trying, push back on the values that they're putting on things. Is that right?
Hi, I'm Alan. Maybe we could put some context to it. The site's about 1.2 hectares. I've got some photos, which I'll leave, but that's the sort of the scale and the size of what we've got. Also, if you pan them around, that's fine. There's also a plan which shows the 76 units as they are laid out. I think the point that we're trying to make is that this is a great amenity for the city. It's going to bring a lot of people into the city. It's up in Elsdon, but it's pretty near the centre of the city. We've put a lot of effort into it. We've paid a lot of fees so far to the council to get it across the line. The development contributions were close to $350,000. I think the amount we've spent on consents and things was over $500,000. And in effect, we've delivered 86 ratepayers to the city, which the smaller units are paying $7,500 a year. If you go to some of the biggest unit we've got is 190 square metres, and I haven't actually been able to add for this meeting the total amount, but it's about revenue of about somewhere between $700,000 and $800,000 to the council every year from the rates as they're currently struck.
It's forever.
So I think, in a way, the whole thing contributes a large measure to the city, and the anomaly that we've got with the rates, particularly of the smaller units, is actually causing not a revolt, I suppose, but a lot of consternation with the people who've already bought. And the units that we've got left, we've got 24 units that are unsold out of 86, which is about 25%. Now that the rates have come out, it's become a very difficult thing to actually market. That, along with insurance, which is not the council's problem, makes them very expensive units to occupy. So I don't know what the answer is. I know you have set ways in which you set the rates. We've had a meeting with Wendy about the rates, particularly on the smaller units, and I just think that maybe we could work together to try to fix this anomaly. The rates are based off the government valuations, and when we got them, to be honest, we didn't do the maths to work out how that was going to affect the actual rates cost, and the time to object to the valuations, which we think, particularly on the small units, are too high, has gone past, because you only have about a month, I think, to object. So we've ended up with a situation where it's not something I think the council designed to do, to injure this thing, but the net effect is that we do have a problem that needs addressing, and we'd like to find a way to work with the council to maybe get a reduction of some of those rates. I think when you look at what's delivered for the rates, the amount that's charged doesn't bear any reality to what is being delivered. For example, with a house, you get rubbish collection and things like that. You put a lot of water into the wastewater system. You use a lot of water. These are industrial units. Some of them are not even occupied on a regular basis, but the other ones that are have a kitchenette where you make a cup of tea and a toilet. So you're actually putting much less burden on the city's resources than what even a similar sized house would. And as Mark mentioned, the difference between what a house pays and what you pay for one of these small units is astronomical, really, when you consider what's delivered and what's given. I think the final point that I want to make is that if we can work together and get this more logical, it's going to be a great amenity for the Porirua city, and we really need to make this work for the city to actually benefit from this rather large development that we've done. So
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ellen and Mark. Any questions from anybody? Yes,
So-
Councillor Hayward, then Councillor Leggett.
I feel that my question is actually going to take up way more time than allotted, so perhaps I may follow this up with you directly afterwards.
Thank you.
Appreciate the fact that you have approximately 2/3 or thereabouts occupied. Can you perhaps very briefly tell us of the kinds of people who are using these spaces, their stories about their businesses and the journeys that they're on? Can you give a little flavour of what that is?
Yeah, there's 60 odd tenants up there now that have bought. A lot have been investors. There is a lot of units empty up there at the moment that people have purchased, but they're all struggling to rent them at the moment with the rates as high as they are and the body corporate fees, and of course the business sector's been hit pretty hard. So we're in a tough climate. So we've got 24 left ourselves. We have 24 units that we've got to pay the rates and insurance on, and we're pushing hard on this. So it's tough times.
Yeah, we have got a list of the various purchases and what their intended use was, whether it's an investment property or to put a business in, which we could share with you. We'd be happy to do that. And that'll give you a good cross-section of what's going on up there. But just thinking off the top of my head, we've got a magician up there who stores all his things.
Unfortunately, no good to us.
Yeah.
Councillor Leggett.
All the way through to businesses. We've got a property maintenance business. The tenant in the corner, Mark, what's that in Shrimpy's unit? What's he do?
That's okay. Councillor Leggett, what's your question?
Thanks, guys. My question is, can I ask we appreciate you coming in and talking to us about this, and you've talked to both the Mayor and the Chief Executive. I just would like to ask the Chief Executive to bring us as councillors some more information about this at some stage, so that, we can't really react to this at the moment.
No,
Appreciate that.
Yeah, but it's nice to be heard. Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to do that, Councillor. Certainly, rates are a blunt tool, and Jim Tocker and I met with Alan and Mark 2 or 3 weeks ago now to talk about this, and there is the potential to nuance our policy, but we'd have to think that through quite carefully because it all has an effect on every other ratepayer in the city. So we will do some preliminary work on it and bring it back. Unfortunately, it doesn't solve today's problem. It potentially solves next year's or the year after's problem. So
We're not complaining about any other rates we get around the city, which are enormous as well, but it's just up there that it just doesn't equate.
Thank you, Mark. You've had your 5 minutes, but thank you for getting up early and coming in, Mark and Alan. We appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Leave this stuff here if you want to have a look at it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Okay, any conflicts of interest declarations? No? No, I've had no notification of extraordinary business. So we'll move to confirmation of minutes from the 25th of July. I'm going to move them to put them on the table. Do I have a seconder? You, Councillor Hayward. Any corrections in there? All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Okay, Mayor's report. Man, it's been another busy month for all of us, I think. I started off with the Friends of Pātaka Art Awards, while Kylie went to the Whitireia Foundation Grants Awards. We've had a lot of things on and requests for double days at the moment. I joined the Dawn Raids event with our Pacific community at Pātaka, and then Kylie and I did the planting at Battle Hill. And then I did the 4 Sundays for the winter series at Pātaka for our music, which was great. If you get a chance to go next year, highly recommend them. They're only an hour. I spoke at the Chamber, the BA5, about our long-term plan. We had a graduation, another police graduation with 58 recruits through, Simon Dello wing. We've had the Victoria University Roadshow at Pātaka, and the ambassador from Samoa joined us there. Kaitahi is opened, and we've got another couple more businesses in there with Zelato Gelato, Get Fixed have moved in, and Fo. I'm sorry if I haven't pronounced that correctly. PHO, yes. Phil and I went to the Tita Bay Little Theatre production. We've had Cook Islands Flag Raising Week. Rotary Leadership Awards, Kylie and Mose hosted that event this year, which was successful. We've had the Tikonui Poly Festival. I didn't pronounce that correctly. Tikiwanui Poly Festival over 2 days, and that was really good. I've joined Minister Pink to visit Kratos in Plymerton and fly a drone. Citizenship, we had another 60 residents sworn in with over 16 nationalities. Nathan and I joined the Patanui Residents Association the other night, and I have to say they were all very friendly. Just a few issues with limbs. Joined Postgate School for the book week and read to the Year 5 students. Went to the Wellington Chamber of Commerce Women in Business event to hear the 3 girls, 1 beehive, and that was quite fun. Ross and I did the Wellington on a Plate event at Pātaka with our local food shops and breweries, and I have to say they did Porirua proud. Porirua Parks had the Lions versus Taranaki. Jeff and I went to that in Kylie. And a very wet game, I have to say, but at least it was a win. We had the Tongan flag raising, did the Aotea College Sports Day for the Year 9 and 10 students, for the 200 students from around the varying schools in Porirua. Had the Science Roadshow at Whitby Collegiate, the Blessing of Aotea Lagoon, Ross and I went to that, and Rotary. Then Ross, Mike, Kathleen, Jeff and Kylie and I went to the local government conference last week with Wendy, which was interesting. Porirua came second in the awards for the LTP video submissions, so our thanks went to Vanessa, Mia and the team. That was a really good job. We had the Gold Awards during that. Unfortunately, our arena team missed out, but it was a really good event. I went to that, and Kylie went to the Kai Ika project, the food project. I joined the Tongan ladies to weave a bracelet on Saturday at Pātaka. That was really good. Opened the flower show, and then Jeff did the judging on the Sunday. We had the Porirua Leaders Forum run by Ngāti Taua on the Saturday. That was good. And then we had 2 games at Porirua Park with the Pride going down to the Cyclones and the Lions beating the Turbos, but the Ballyfull won out on the day, I have to say. Izzy, Jeff and Kylie were there. Plymouton Residents Association with Ross. Aotea Residents Association last night with Kathleen, and then we got to congratulate our arena team, events team, who won the best category for culture and heritage event at the New Zealand Event Association Award on Tuesday night. So that was really good, with 2 of our staff teams taking out awards. So congratulations to everybody. Another Badly bunch. Yeah. Okay, up to you, Taku. Anything from you?
Sorry, I can't hear what's being said.
Sorry, Josh. I just said that I've only managed to get to maybe a third of the meetings that the Mayor's been to last month, and just added that I guess some of the pressing issues for the iwi at the moment is dealing with the 7AA bill that not only us but a lot of service providers in the city are facing that obstacle as well. And it's been a pretty difficult challenge to work through. I'm still working through it. Yeah, I never went to the rugby game, so it was too wet, too cold, and too cold. But by and large, it has been a busy month, and hopefully we can get to daylight saving cricket.
Thank you. I've got no petitions. Our committee recommendations: 11.1, refresh of the Tamariki and Rangatahi strategy, our 3-year action plan. I'll move it to put it on the table. Seconded by Councillor Duncan. Would you like to come up? Have you got anything you'd like to say to us before we...
Yes, please, thank you. Through the chair. In December last year, if I got that on, ELT tasked us with instructions to review the original Children and Young People's Framework and come back with a refreshed Tamariki and Rangatahi strategy. We're here today to note the draft strategy, plan on a page, 3-year action plan and key themes from our engagement activities with children and young people. The plan on a page provides a foundational document. It captures our vision and our strategic priority and reasons for why we have a strategy for our Tamariki and Rangatahi. It also sets out what we can do as a council, our role and the types of functions that we manage. Most importantly, it captures what is important for our rangatahi right now, as well as how we want to work with them in the future. The plan on the page is in a draft form and requires a full design. Early in the development of the strategy, the project team made the decision to retain the 5 focus areas of the original framework. We believe these are still relevant, capture the work we do as a council, and remain intuitive to the needs of our younger population. A review of our other council youth strategies around the motu backed this assumption. We also made the decision to incorporate the mana taiohi principle-based framework that outlines how we want to work with our rangatahi. This framework provides the mechanism for council to have a more youth-centric approach and involve our younger population more in decision-making where appropriate. Over the past 3 to 4 months, we've engaged with our tamariki and rangatahi to listen in and check in to what they believe is important for them under these focus areas. It's their views which underpin the actions in the draft action plan across council. In summary, we heard from approximately 800 children and young people between the ages of 10 and 24 years. This included a mix of approaches and engagement methods. For our younger children, we developed a fun survey which we sent out via schools with information about the long-term plan. We received a total of about 350 surveys, and in order to get a little deeper into the needs and wants of our younger population, we also ran 4 workshop sessions in the classrooms in different parts of Porirua, hearing more in depth from about 80 tamariki. For our older rangatahi, we put into practice the mana taiohi principles with some peer-led workshops. We provided the peer leaders with some instructions, resources, and a guide for running the workshop together with a template for recording insights. This resulted in in feedback from about 175 young people, and this approach meant we were able to reach more people and they were able to be very honest with their feedback. Another approach included working with our trusted stakeholders, including Wesley Community Action, Pacifica Thrive, He Huarahi Tamariki, the secondary school for teen parents, and NZMA Alternative Education Campus. We equipped them to run workshops with young people they work with regularly, and this Trusted Voices approach was another way to gather feedback in a way that was just safe and comfortable for our younger people, our younger population. A desktop of engagement activities across council over the past year, including engagement through the development of Ola Kamatanga and the Beginning of Life Māori 2050 strategies, provided further insights. All the feedback was analysed to develop some key themes, and these are in the appendix in your papers. For the development of the draft action plan, we met with the GMs and Tier 3 managers to socialise the action plan, and begin conversations around identifying actions over the next 3 years across all of council. We expect to develop these actions and ways to measure them. This is already happening, and teams are reaching out to work with each other. We also met with key stakeholders to build relationships for implementing the actions, including Nuku Ora, Partners Porirua and Sport NZ, and we hope to do more of these over the next few weeks. How we measure our success is part of the work of the policy team in determining an outcomes framework that aims to have a consistent approach together with other strategies such as Ola Kamatanga and Māori 2050. The intention of this strategy and the draft action plan is to provide a licence to implementing the plan, utilising existing budgets, teaming up across the whole of council to bring better outcomes for our younger population. Having the confidence that we're working on what's important to our tamariki and our rangatahi right now, and realising the strategic priority of keeping them at the heart of our city.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora, Kaimahi. Thank you very much for the report and your explanation as a prelude. I reflect that that is a very thorough process, and I'm glad that you have reflected upon the mana taiohi, the role of rangatahi in terms of the feedback as well. As I read through the report, obviously a lot of this is constrained by budget, but notwithstanding that, I didn't see a lot of content here in terms of what the timeframes are around some of those, especially when it comes to the high-level actions and the priority order that will have to be rationalised through that. So is there work on that, and when will council see that kind of timeframe or roadmap of that, of how progress is being measured?
Yes, absolutely correct. We do need to continue to do the work to put it into a timeline, very similar to Ola Kamatanga. So we've got the actions, and now we need to work out the years that we want to do them over the next 3 years. We've really worked hard to work with across council, with our other teams to understand the actions and the business as usual that goes on, but we're also wanting to look at new initiatives. You are right about the constrained budget environment, and so we're trying to be clever about how we do that. Some of the things will be research phases before they turn into actual actions. And obviously we would come through council to if we needed extra funds. In terms of timeframes coming back to you, we would be happy to do that. We'd probably be guided by Wendy and Ruben.
Okay. So in the second attachment focus areas and the feedback that came from Rangatahi, I just want to note this quote here. Education and support and transitioning to work or further education was the biggest feature. So the obvious question I now have to ask of officers is that a priority area in terms of helping Rangatahi get into employment?
So the employment, the transition was a big thing that came out. And so, yes, it is a priority in terms of the fact that we do the work expo. So we are involved in things that do it. What we don't do as a council is obviously we don't have youth workers that we employ in schools to help with the transition phase. But we do have people and programs that we can pull on. For example, we had a great one on the internet the other day about we've got a young person up working in parks who is actually doing their NZQA qualifications through groundsman's keeping. So the things that we want to do and prioritise are within our control. They're things that we can change. Education and transition is quite a hard space to play in, and as a council, in some of our projects in the past, we've struggled to kind of really get in with education to engage with them in a good way. So what we're trying to do here and prioritise is those things that we can affect. So we can affect work expos, which we will deliver. We can affect how we employ young people and the qualifications that we can try and support them to get through the frameworks, through the NZQA frameworks. So yes, it is a priority, but within the scope of what we are already delivering, rather than us suggesting that we will employ somebody to go into schools to be a transition worker or any of those things.
One last up. Obviously, one of the crucial things in terms of any feedback is making sure that you don't lose sight of those groups who share space, identity in the space, but also identify in other parts of the space as well.
Yep.
And I think about those who have disabilities in particular. And so how robust are officers feeling about hearing from those in that group, which from an intersectionality point of view is still going to be an important group who also face additional challenges. We've just talked about employment. They will certainly have an additional burden as well.
Yeah, agreed. I can answer it, but yep. So it is an evolving space for us. We didn't get a large... we didn't specifically target the disability sector for a start, but we are working with some organisations such as Ahuru Moai, not Te Ahuru Moai, the CHIP, but Paul Latham's area. So Child, Youth and Young People team are meeting with Paul soon. So we are trying to work with those groups, but I can't hand on heart say we're nailing all of it. So it is in our remit. We know that it is an area that we need to go back to and that we need to concentrate on. You're right, there are higher needs in other places. One thing we have committed to doing for our young people is we invited them here today, but we thought we were going to be a bit later, and 8:45 for young people is not necessarily their ideal time to be in chambers. But we have committed to going back to them, and we want to use their networks to continue to kind of get back into the communities and to keep them updated. You'll see in one of the engaged and involved focus area, one of the things they said is they don't feel heard and they don't feel that we go back to them. And so that is something that we've taken on board, and something that we will do is going back to all the people that have provided this information to us with the plan to say, here we are.
Okay.
If I could just add to that, we did actually meet yesterday with the parks team, so this is a really good example of meeting up and crossing over already to talk a bit about a playground that's coming up and that Paul is involved with as well. So there's already those connections being made, and how we can help with engagement and getting to the right people. The other thing I was going to say is we've reached out, we did invite some of our communities to be involved in the engagement, but just because of what was happening with them at the time, they were unable to participate. But there will have been a diverse number of children involved in that engagement. And the last thing I just wanted to say was through our Mahi Rangatahi student that we had, we have reached out to an organisation called Insight Out, which we're already sort of talking about what can we do in terms of children and even in-house within our own policies, to how we can work with them. So we've got some great things going on.
Cool. Excellent. No more questions, thanks.
Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thanks for the report. It's pretty fulsome, all right. You mentioned on page 23 that you went to 4 schools. What were the 4 schools?
Plimerton, Porirua Bay, Rangikora,
and the 7-day Adventist school.
Yeah, that's right. I was just trying to remember the last one. And it were all very different responses, actually.
Yeah. No, that's a nice cross-section. Thanks. Look, I love the principles of aligning, and you mentioned it all the way through there with our 2 strategies, the Māori strategy and the Pacific strategy. But it highlights a real concern for me because I look at our vast Asian community here, and they don't exist when it comes to things from council. Like, they get no mention at all. And we have an African community as well. We have a number of different communities. I wonder how much effort you put into going and discussing it with those communities.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we do have, I'm sure you've met CC, our Welcoming Communities Coordinator, who works within our team. So we work really closely with CC on our projects. And we did work with a group of migrant community refugee kids that actually came into the council here, and we had a session with them around our strategy and what did they think was important under the focus areas. So for that particular group, we did reach some of them, obviously not enough, but that's an ongoing piece of work for us to continue to reach out and to work better within our own team across, who's got the different portfolios of work and who we work with.
Yeah, okay. I think this probably leaves room for the Multicultural Society to have some sort of a strategy as well within Porirua, probably worth looking at in the future. I noted too where you said that you're working within budgets for the first year. I'd like to see for the first year taken off that and just say we're working within budgets, if that could be arranged, please.
Councillor Philo?
I was happy to see wellbeing in terms of the physical, in particular the investigating for free basketball for casual games. And I've had a lot of parents in the community that have approached me about this in the past, so I'd be really keen to hear if you have more, if this has progressed or like where it's sort of sitting at the moment?
Not at this stage, but we have been speaking with the arena to look at the potential of opening up for casual games, because we've heard loud and clear across the whole of the region that that's one of the priorities for young people, and they want to be able to have opportunities to go and just play in a casual drop-in type of way. So we've started those conversations.
Councillor Leggett?
Just following on from Mike's question around budgets and your comment around first year. So my question is, if there was no extra money outside the first year, yeah, right, how severely constrained would your work program be?
I think the approach that we're taking is really around systems approach. We're really wanting to work better across council and build those connections within all of our teams, and that's what we're trying to reflect in that 3-year action plan. So previously with the framework, I thought that was an awesome piece of work, and I obviously wasn't involved in that because I've only been here for 2 years, but I was really impressed. But the thing that it lacked a little bit was the actions, and the other thing it lacked a little bit was how we want to work with our young people, and that's where the mana taiohi principles come in. I think that we can do a lot without money. It's a lot about combining our resources, working better, and some of the projects that we're wanting to do are about working with other organisations. So, for example, if we would like to build a civics program within schools or work with schools around civics, those are things that we can do with people that we already have. I've talked to Jack about it already. He's keen to be involved. We've talked to the elections and they are keen. There are lots of models out there for the Ministry of Youth Development that we've looked at. So there's quite a lot we can do without actually having to spend a lot more money.
Sorry. So you were saying you're not going to come back and ask for more money?
Oh, if I can hand on heart say that. We can always ask, but we, yeah.
No, sorry, great. It was great to see. I mean, and there's a lot of stuff in here, and I just find it hard to believe that we're going to achieve that without putting extra resources into it. So that was the import of my question.
Thank you. Tell me, yep, 2 questions from me. Sorry, Kylie, I'll come to you. Sam Broughton from Local Government New Zealand, their council has developed a civics game. You may want to approach him and get that because he said it's taken off. The Multicultural Council said they approached to have their own strategy and it's been declined. Can you just confirm that?
I'm sorry.
They were told by the officer in charge that has been declined?
No, I don't know. But would that...
I'm unaware of that. We're probably slightly at risk of spitting out a lot of strategies at the moment. So it wouldn't be surprised if somebody put a dampening spirit on that. But that's not to say that we won't work with multicultural communities. So we can go away and have a look at where that thought came from.
It's fine, thank you. Councillor, we happy?
Thank you for this. I just wanted to, I suppose it's just a suggestion really about the schools kind of that you work with. In particular, when you're adopting the mana taiohi principles, I think that Te Kura Māori or Porirua school would be quite helpful in getting feedback from them because they adopt those principles anyway across Te Kura.
Thank you. That's appreciated.
Okay, thank you everybody. It's been moved and seconded. So all those in favour? All those against? Carried. We move to 11.2, Māori Wards. I'm going to move it, put it on the table. Seconded by Councillor Philo. Open for discussion. Who's going first? Everyone's jumping. Yes, Councillor Duncan.
Look, it all makes perfect sense, and when I read that Ngāti Toa are quite happy with going to the poll option, fantastic. Go for it.
Thank you. No one else? Yes, Councillor we happy, sorry.
Thank you. Wow, talk about local councils in New Zealand being backed right into a corner with 2 options that could be set up to fail either way. Whether that be those on the Māori electoral roll, our local communities, our local ratepayers, and the ability for us to set our own representation. It is interesting to note, though, so far that 18 councils across New Zealand have voted to retain their Māori wards, and that tells us that they believe in their own processes and principles. A referendum is not only unnecessary, but it also distracts from the pressing issues that are facing local councils such as water management and infrastructure development. It's actually really disheartening to see resources diverted towards a potentially divisive debate when our focus should be on addressing the real needs of our residents. I hope that as a community that we don't buy into the division and anger that continues across parts of the country. Kia ora.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
I think my view hasn't really changed, even with a lot of emails coming our way. But anyhow, I think Porirua City Council, number one, I think Porirua City Council has a strong relationship or partnership with our local iwi. We've got representation around this council table, and I think the council lives and breathes the commitment to our MOU on a daily, which is cool. The second thing I'll say is the issues around electing Māori representation, at least in Porirua, have not been an issue for a long time. Porirua always manages to elect Māori representation. So it would be easy to not support the current recommendation, but I do support it. And it's because without changing communities, no one can really guarantee that te tiriti values will be honoured and that we might not have effective representation from taurahere Māori who come from ngā haue whā. I kind of feel like the Deputy Mayor, I feel like we've been backed into a corner. So I just want to get I just feel like we're getting set up almost. So 2 years into having our sole Māori ward, we're being asked to consider its existence. So to clarify, the Amendment Act, I'm glad Jack's here, it requires us to decide whether we disestablish the Māori seat, we roll back to 2019, have a shortened representative review, is that correct, at 10K?
Kia ora, Councillor, through the chair. So yes, councils must make a active decision under the Act now to either retain their Māori ward and proceed to a poll in 2025, or to disestablish and either roll back to 2019 or undertake a shorter representation review.
Okay. And then we have to hold so if we continue with the Māori ward, we have to hold a compulsory poll imposed by the government with council or our ratepayers lumped with the 45K that they have to, for the poll to take place. Yep. That's cool. So this is from Christopher Luxon, who was telling us to watch for what we spend money on. Okay, cool. So I just want to clarify, 50% of majority threshold, that is 50% of those who have voted?
Correct.
Is what we have to get over. Can you advise on any legal ramifications or consequences of not holding the referendum?
So currently around New Zealand, as Councillor Wihapi mentioned, 18 councils have voted to retain and proceed to a poll. There's about 3 further who are currently taking advice on the legal implications of not holding a poll. To be clear, we are required under the Amendment Act to make an active decision. There was some commentary in the Select Committee report that some members of the committee believed that if councils failed to make an active decision, a problem would exist in the local authority, and then that may open up the path of ministerial intervention into that council. But that's at the minister's discretion.
Okay. I'm not advising that we get legal advice, but it would be good to see what they come back with from the other councils.
Yeah, I believe Palmerston North's paper is coming very shortly.
Yeah. Okay, cool, thanks.
Councillor Trillin? Oh, sorry. Yes, Taku.
With, the Deputy Mayor's comments.
Thank you.
Hang on, as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Trillin?
Thank you. I've got some substantive comments I'll move to in a second, but I was just thinking off the back of what Councillor Ford was saying there. Would it be possible for us to add in like a non-substantive amendment, maybe just noting that we're being required to do this by the government? So something to the effect of, like, note that in order to retain the Porirua Māori Ward, central government requires a binding poll to be held at the elections. I'm happy to move that as a proposed amendment.
You can, but it's part of the law anyway. We don't have a choice.
Yeah, no, I understand that. It's just because I think noting that the proposal here is that we are voting to have this referendum. I get the sense, I think most of us think that having a referendum is a bad idea, but we're being forced to have it, and I just like to recognise that.
Order.
Yes.
Happy to second that motion.
Yeah. Would you like your comments? Who's frozen?
Sorry, can you hear me?
And now, but you're frozen on the screen. Yep. So your comments?
Okay. Yeah, tell you what, I'm going to turn off my camera because I've got really shaky Wi-Fi. Okay, cool. So I will move that, but I'm happy for us to vote on that after I've spoken. I'm strongly in favour of the recommended option to retain the Porirua Māori Ward. It was the right thing to do, and we introduced it 3 years ago. It remains the right thing to do now. I completely agree with all of the comments made by our Deputy Mayor. I think this is an important step in honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi. I'm very frustrated that we're having this debate again. I do want to start quickly by speaking positively, though. I think introducing Māori wards has been a successful and promising step forward for local government right across the country, and that while for the majority of history, or the history of our country, our founding document has been at best neglected and at worst deliberately subverted, but in the past few years we've seen councils up and down the country take an important proactive step towards properly honouring Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And not only has that been the right thing to do, it's something that has given many people hope for the future and an idea of what an Aotearoa that actually honours our founding document could look like. And I think that's a really important and powerful thing. However, that was then, this is now. We're being forced to go through this process by a government that isn't interested in councils making decisions for themselves. They supposedly campaigned on the importance of localism, but I think we're seeing here that that's a complete farce. Localism suited the National Party when it could be used by them as a tool to attack Māori via the vehicle of affordable water reforms. But when councils want to actually make decisions for themselves that threaten to actually uphold Te Tiriti o Waitangi and ensure Māori have a voice in how our communities are governed, they rush to take that localism away. And it's important for us to note that no other type of ward is subject to this type of poll requirement. And we should be really crystal clear here. The only consistent position in regards to localism by this government is the one that is anti-Māori. The price of that is many-fold. Councils up and down the country being forced to relitigate this has emboldened a huge number of, frankly, racist voices within the community. And the government has deliberately fostered that. They are deliberately stoking the fires of racism because they believe it's politically beneficial to do so. And we need to be really clear that we are opposed to that and call it out for what it is. I want to note as well that the comments have been made by some of my colleagues around how we're being deliberately set up to fail in terms of being forced to take on these extra costs that we've no ability to avoid. If nothing else, if we're being forced to have these referendums, the government should be stumping up to pay for it, but of course they're never going to do that. But all of that aside, I started positively. I want to end positively. We have an opportunity here to align with those other 18 councils to send a message loud and clear that we respect Te Tiriti o Waitangi and value having a dedicated Māori voice at our table. I hope to see us vote unanimously in favour of retaining our Māori ward, and I hope that everyone around this table will vocally support retaining our Māori ward in advance of and throughout next year's election. Kia ora. And I would like to propose the amendment to note that requirement.
Thank you, Josh. We're going to put the amendment, which has been seconded by Jeff, and it reads that the referendum is being forced on local government. Is that enough for you, or do you want any more wording in there?
I'm comfortable with that.
You're comfortable with that?
I do have 1 second. I will post into the chat a proposed exact wording if that is helpful.
Very conscious. We'll have to probably put this on hold, people, for a minute. Note that in order to retain the Porirua Māori ward, central government requires a binding poll. I know.
A binding poll be held at the 2025
Sorry, Jeff,
local
have
elections.
I'll
speak to the amendment if you want.
Hang on. I'll put the amendment first. All those in favour? All those against? Jeff, okay. You want those recorded, Mike and Ross? So that's carried. Jeff, you can speak to it.
I was just going to say before the vote that...
Sorry.
No,
I did it the other way around because I've got the hearings.
I think that, I reflect that, again, all we have are our words and our vote. Posterity requires us to provide some context to the decision. I think the amendment tries to justify that. There will be individuals who may go through in greater detail, read the rest of the documentation, but the vote is the vote. The motion is the motion. That's why I think the amendment is necessary, and I'm glad that we have passed it. I'm happy to talk to the substantive now, if possible.
Yes, please.
So for me, many of my colleagues have already said their own views about this, which I feel is in alignment with my own views. My uneasiness is in that the uncertainty that those councils like Palmerston North, who may choose to go down the pathway of actively choosing not to put a referendum to the public, and what the consequences mean for that. Now, if I've understood what you've said, Jack, there is the cause for the minister to effectively bring in statutory managers and remove all of the councillors and bend the council to the minister's whim. I don't think anybody really wants to go down that path, and I'm sure that communities in places like Tauranga have been thrilled with the situation there for different triggers, but the same situation. At the same time, as had been said before, the rationale behind bringing in a Māori ward only a short while ago still holds. But I'm also reminded of what I said at the time, which is that the mechanism of introducing Māori wards is not a perfect solution, nor is it a perfect solution across the entire motu either. During the Three Waters debate, the word that I would have used rather than co-governance, or phrase instead of co-governance, would be shared accountability. I think everybody, when you talk about it in those terms, starts to understand why Te Tiriti is important. It is about shared accountability, whether it sits in Te Ao Hurihuri, the Western realm, or it sits in Te Ao Māori. Our governance should reflect that. So holding a referendum on the reversion back to a previous time without Māori wards doesn't sound like shared accountability to me. Nor is there any utterances from the current government about wanting to even have that conversation. And for all of the things that the previous government did, at least with its review of local government, the one part I thought it actually was constructive in was what a 21st century Aotearoa solution to local governance would have looked like. So I'm uneasy about a referendum. I'm also uneasy about a referendum because it becomes, as I have mentioned to the Deputy Mayor, it becomes a referendum on their personal performance by default. That is unfair. That is entirely unfair. Moreover, if you are not happy with, the outcomes of an election, that's, part and parcel. My party didn't win necessarily the last election. I got to deal with that. But at least I will always hold to account the things that they say and how they act upon it. And has been said before, it's all well and good for the Prime Minister to say that to tighten our belts and focus on the nice to haves, but then to not pay for a referendum that they believe is important is contrary to the very principles that they espouse, especially when they come into talking to councils across the entire country. It is rude. It isn't governance, and it's not even shared accountability. I'll support the motion, but I'm putting it with those conditions in place. Kia ora.
Thank you, Jeff. Before I go to our other speakers, can I just say to our people waiting on hearings, because we do have Oliver waiting online, I'm sorry we are running late. We'll probably be about 10 minutes late. Sorry to you in the public audience. So Taku, you're next.
Yeah, just a couple of short words. We know and understand democracy is democracy, but for Porirua City Council, I would have hoped that it would have been 100% supported.
Anyone else got their hands up? Okay. I want to say I completely support having this. We shouldn't be having to do it. Our Māori ward has already been elected here. Our Deputy Mayor is doing an absolute fantastic job. We always work with our iwi at the table, so for me, I don't see what an issue is. I'm annoyed we have to pay for it, but we have to suck it up and let's get the votes to support the Māori ward. So with that, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? Carried 100%. Thank you very much. So now we move into our hearings. Jack will come back up. And Oliver, you're going to come online. I know you're waiting. Thank you for waiting. Oliver is coming in on Zoom from Somerset. Okay, Oliver, are you there? Can he not hear me? Oliver, you're on mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you've got 10 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You can start. You've got 10 minutes.
Great. Tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Somerset's submission on the draft development contributions policy. For brevity, I'll call it the contributions policy from here. By way of introduction, I'm Oliver Boyd. I'm the General Manager of Acquisitions and Development for Somerset in New Zealand. In my role, I have operational oversight for all of our new retirement villages from before we acquire the new land through to the start of construction on site. I appreciate there's been many submissions, and I'll keep my presentation brief. I'd like to introduce Somerset and explain what we do. Somerset's New Zealand's second largest developer and operator of retirement villages. That makes us one of New Zealand's largest home builders. In fact, in March 2023, we were ranked second largest residential builder by value behind Fletcher's. Somerset has 39 villages completed or in development across New Zealand and provides a range of living options to more than 8,400 residents. We've recently moved into Victoria, Melbourne as well. Somerset has a proven track record for over 30 years in building and operating high-quality comprehensive care retirement villages. And I'd just like to draw that distinction between comprehensive care retirement villages and lifestyle villages, as it's relevant to the context of levying development contributions. Somerset builds new comprehensive care retirement villages, which means we provide a continuum of care on site, as opposed to lifestyle villages, which may have minimal or no care provided. Given the care component within the village, comprehensive care villages attract an older cohort. The average age of our residents entering Somerset's villages across the country is 81 years of age. New Zealand is facing a housing crisis, including retirement living and particularly an aged care crisis. The Porirua district is not immune to that, and with the region expecting to grow significantly in the next 30 years, and particularly growth within the 70 years and older cohort of the population. That population growth and demographic change will result in even further demand for retirement villages and aged care. It's vital that the regulatory environment recognise and provide for development that is required to meet the growth demand, and that funding for infrastructure is done on a fair, equitable and proportionate basis as a Local Government Act requires. Turning to the development contributions policy now. Somerset submits that for comprehensive care retirement villages like Somerset's, the per unit occupancy is reduced when compared to a typical household unit. Somerset's average occupancy for its independent units is 1.3 residents per unit, and for care units, occupancy is 1 resident per unit. In addition to recognising a unique population discount for comprehensive care retirement villages, the development contributions policy also needs to recognise a further reduction in demand due to the low pattern of demand that's unique to the elderly demographic occupying a village. In our submission, we draw your attention to the recent Tauranga City Council development contributions policy. Through years of our industry submitting on the proposed development contributions policy, Council finally acknowledged that it needed to undertake its own independent review and assessment of the unique demand factors for retirement villages to inform its new development contributions policy. That review was completed in 2023, and Council has now adopted the discount factors noted in that report in their latest DC's policy that was adopted this year. A copy of that independent assessment was appended to our submission. We consider Tauranga City Council's development contributions policy as fair, equitable and proportionate based on the expected demand from its independent study. We therefore seek that Council adopt demand discount factors for transport and community infrastructure based on Tauranga City Council's independent report as outlined in our submission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I welcome any questions you have.
Thank you, Oliver. Councillor Hayward has a question.
Kia ora, Oliver. Thank you very much for coming on and speaking to your submission. I went through it a few times because I wanted to make sure that I got the gist solidly enough. So here are my questions. As under current status quo, not the proposed change, nor the recommended changes in your submission, an operator like Somerset would be receiving a discount factor on development. Is that correct?
Kia ora. There is, I think, within your existing development contributions policy, a recognition of that lower pattern of demand. We're saying it doesn't go far enough and therefore isn't fair, proportionate and reasonable as the Act requires.
Okay. My next question is, you've noted in your submission and in your presentation as well, the housing pressure for older New Zealanders, in particular in the Porirua context. And by reducing increasing the discount factors, which is what you're proposing, does that make it more likely or less likely that in the next 3 years, which is the period of this policy's period of relevancy, to have more developments being built by Somerset within Porirua City?
More likely.
More likely. So I want to tease that down here. Is that if it wasn't the case, and that the either status quo or the proposed recommendation by officers were in place, would that make it less likely?
I think so.
Okay. So my next question is, within the next 3 years, is it likely that Somerset are going to be building more facilities within Porirua City? I want to get a sense of where that actually is.
I hope so. I can't speak to active acquisitions we have. We're subject to continuous disclosure requirements with the NZX, and so I can't speak to specific opportunities, but certainly my hope is that we'll be in a position to announce a new Somerset village within the Porirua district in the next 3 years.
Okay. You can understand my dilemma here in terms of trying to make prudent decision-making, in that there is a financial benefit to a private company in the provision of this service, and yet at the same time there is an inability to get clarity on whether that's actually going to guarantee increased provision of the services that you currently provide. Do you understand the dilemma?
Yeah, I understand the dilemma. I think the important piece is that the whole development contributions regime is set up to be fair and reasonable, and specifically attached to the demand that the development produces. And so you're never going to have a guarantee that if you reduce development contributions that you're going to get more development. I mean, Lower Hutt City had no development contributions, and with the intention that it would encourage development. Whether that happened or not, I'm not sure. And we're not suggesting that you put development contributions to zero. What we're saying is it needs to be as close as possible to being fair and reasonable, as that's what the Act requires. And we've got an independent study by Tauranga. Now, if you guys don't agree with that, that's absolutely your decision. But what I would encourage is you undertaking your own independent study, so that you can have confidence in that the development contributions are fair and reasonable.
Okay.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind, and probably is lost, is that when we build a new village, we typically have 350, 400 people in that village, and that's essentially 350, 400 new ratepayers. And I think chief executives across the country often see the benefit of that. That's a whole lot of new rates that are coming into the village now, into your community. Now, understand you can't give that that credit in the development contributions policy context, but certainly, we don't muck around. We're building sort of typically 40 to 60 units within a village every year, and that's a whole lot of additional new rates that the company is paying as soon as those people are occupying the units.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. No other questions? Thank you, Oliver, for zooming in.
Thanks very much for your time.
Okay, we have Richard Stevenson and Tracy Hanson from Bupa. Would you like to come up? So you've got 10 minutes also.
Morning, and thank you. My name's Tracy Hayson, and I'm a Managing Director at Hayson Now. We're planning consultants for Bupa, and I have with me Richard Stevenson, who is the Director of Property at Bupa Australia New Zealand. Thank you for the opportunity to provide feedback on the draft DC policy. Bupa made a submission on the policy and also supports the Retirement Village Association's submission. I believe you'll hear from Mr. Collins on that next. Bupa is an international health and care company. In New Zealand, it is also a significant owner, operator and developer of retirement and aged care villages. In fact, it is currently the second largest aged care provider by bed numbers in the country. Bupa villages attract customers with higher care needs, who in turn tend to be slightly older than the industry average, with the current average age of entry at 81 years in retirement villages and 80 years for their care homes. The minimum age for entry to a Bupa retirement village is 70 years. New Bupa villages have high levels of on-site amenities. For example, they provide community centres, health and recreation facilities, hair salons, medical services, swimming pools, cinemas, cafes, restaurants, and landscape gardens, to name but a few. Due to the age of village customers, combined with this provision of very high quality on-site amenities, demand on council services and infrastructure is proportionately lower than the typical residential demand. Bupa finds that residents rely heavily on the services and amenities provided on site due to their limited mobility and care needs, or they simply enjoy the company, friendship and convenience of the immediate community around them. Bupa is motivated to meet the increasing demand for aged care and retirement housing in Porirua through investment in new facilities. Bupa have acquired land and are currently working on a proposed new village in the Whitby area. New facilities require significant financial investment, and Bupa is seeking that development contributions are proportionate, equitable and fair, and relate to the very low demand that retirement village residents have on council infrastructure and services. The draft development contributions policy has a unit of demand for retirement units of 0.5 of a household equivalent unit and 0.4 for aged care rooms. Bupa does support the identification of retirement and aged care as specific development types, but seeks a more equitable approach to the proposed broad stroke occupancy rate. Rates should reflect the very low demand of village residents on water, wastewater, roading, reserves and community facilities. The Bupa submission sets out in Appendix 1 the units of demand that are sought, and the detail on that is also set out in the Retirement Village Association's submission. The rates, as they apply to the different services provided, average out at around 0.2 of a household equivalent unit for retirement units and 0.15 for care. Should changes not be made to the proposed household equivalent unit rates in the DC policy, Bupa will need to rely on the special assessment process that's contained in the policy. Special assessments are time-consuming and are uncertain, which creates risk for development feasibility. Bupa is seeking that greater clarity is provided in the special assessment provisions to recognise their low demand activities. The proposed additional wording that's put forward in the RVA submission is supported. Detail of the proposed relief sought by Bupa is set out, as I said, in Appendix 1 to the written submission, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, either myself or Mr. Richardson. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Leggett.
Sorry, just out of interest, do your assessments of the household equivalent units, the 0.2 and the 0.15, for roading, for example, take into account visitors?
Yes, they do. So they're based on...
How does it do that? Yeah.
So it's based on traffic assessment that is done both before a development by traffic engineers, where they look at a traffic generation rate per villa, usually, which includes visitors, residents, staff, and it averages it out to give you a figure. And then there's also been further work done by the RVA on what's actually happening across the industry, and that detail is set out in their submission.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Councillor Hayward.
Thank you, and thank you very much, Tracy and Richard, for coming in to speak. You would have heard previously my questions and the dilemma that I faced with regards to the proposals that are in your submission. You have answered the question I was going to ask you, which is about the work being done on a proposed space within Whitby. So thank you for disclosing that. As Bupa is not a privately traded company, I guess the conditions, NZX disclosure conditions that apply to Somerset don't apply to yourselves. So perhaps I hope that you might be able to provide a bit more clarity here in terms of your own process of assessment when coming to the development process. obviously you feel that there's enough people here in Porirua that will be potential customers, or for whatever phrase, for this new location. Do you do analysis of what is that as a proportion of those aged over 70 in Porirua? So I'm trying to get a sense of how much would that meet in terms of your capacity in that space, notwithstanding you've made some general comment about that in your submission.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. Kia ora. So, look, we do national demographic studies taken from census data. We also look at our competitors. We look at the developments that are coming up, and we sort of basically form a national average of demand, having looked at the demographic analysis, and then we look at each individual area as to whether the demand is above or below the national average, which gives us a good idea as to where we go next.
Okay.
Porirua has been identified as having a higher than average national demand by our demographic studies. So currently we have bought a piece of land which has been signed off as a feasibility study. Our next hurdle, if you like, is actually getting funding to actually develop the land, and that's where we're at now. We have not yet got that funding in place, and this is why we wanted to make sure that this opportunity, works for Bupa and the community.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
So I have a supplement with regards to that then, which is as part of the analysis, there will be a cohort of people who you don't provide this free of charge. There is a price that has to be paid to access these services. That price is X. People may have Y, but Y isn't X. Do you have an idea of what that cohort of individuals who would not be met by your service delivery as part of your assessment? You might have the number by inference, the number who would be, because of cost, be able to afford. So I'm just wondering if you have the opposite as well.
It's almost directly linked to household ownership, to be honest, in terms of retirement villages. So we obviously look at not only the population but also the demographic of household ownership. That's specific to retirement villages. But in terms of care, it's a little bit more complex than that, because obviously we've got the government funding that comes into the mix, as well as some private top-up funding for accommodation. But what Bupa do, where we differ a little bit from our competitors, is that we have a huge variety of accommodation, both high quality, low quality. We have the highest. We serve the highest acuity of care in the country in terms of the 4 care types. Not many of our competitors do psychogeriatric care, for example. So we are a real sort of, I guess, across the board provider in terms of looking at all members of society with all care needs.
Okay. Thank you. I've got no questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming in. Now we have John Collins from the Retirement Village Association. You've got 10 minutes, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Not working. One of them might be broken, I think. Happened yesterday.
Okay. Kia ora. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Collins. I'm the Executive Director of the Retirement Villages Association of New Zealand, and we represent the interests of the owners, developers and managers of registered retirement villages across the Motu. I'd just like to acknowledge Somerset's and Bupa's submission, and obviously we are in support of their position. Our retirement villages provide appropriate accommodation for a vulnerable sector of our community and support the physical and mental well-being of residents. Retirement villages also ease pressure on the general housing market and provide employment and other economic benefits to the community. As you'll be aware, the population in Porirua is ageing, with the 75-plus age group projected to triple between 2018 and 2048. Demand for retirement living is also growing. There are currently just 3 retirement villages in Porirua providing housing and care for some 700 residents. In our view, these villages are not sufficient to meet the growing needs of older people in the district. Further village development is expected and is indeed needed, as you've heard from our other 2 members. We're seeking to ensure the Porirua district The Porirua Development Contribution Policy complies with the Local Government Act's requirements for DCs to be fair, equitable and proportionate. Retirement villages and their residents create much lower demands for council facilities compared with the general population. The DC policy needs to reflect those lower demands. DCs that are fair, equitable and proportionate will support investment in Porirua City and choice in retirement housing options and care for residents of the city. Our key concern with the DC policy is that units of demand for retirement units and aged care rooms are disproportionate to the very low demand for council infrastructure generated by retirement village and care residents. The DC policy recognises the lower occupancy rates of retirement villages. That is, the 0.5 units of demand for retirement units reflects the average occupancy of 1.3 people per retirement unit, compared with the average dwelling occupancy of 2.7 people. This is supported, but occupancy is only one factor we submit that reduces demand for council facilities. The DC policy does not reflect the reduced demand that arises from demographic factors, such as the age and frailty of residents, or from the on-site communal amenities provided in a retirement village. The RVA submission provides evidence to support the reduced units of demand that we propose. By way of a brief summary, for water and wastewater, the submission provides information on demand collected from operational villages across New Zealand. This information has been compared to the baseline set out in the policy to calculate a proportionate unit of demand. Secondly, for stormwater, we consider the DC contribution to be based on the impervious surface area of a development as opposed to a per-unit approach to ensure that charges are proportionate to the actual demand. Thirdly, for roading, our submission explains that the older people who live in retirement villages don't create the same traffic demands as the general population due to their reduced activity levels and provision of on-site amenities. We have data generated by the operational retirement villages, and we have compared this information to the baseline set out in the policy to calculate the proportionate unit of demand set out in the submission. Similarly, retirement village residents create a very low demand for reserves and community facilities as a result of demographic factors such as age, frailty and health, as well as villages generally providing on-site facilities that better meet their residents' specific needs. Our submission refers to research carried out on physical activities of older persons, as well as specific survey work that has been conducted to understand how much retirement village residents use council facilities. This information supports the proportionate unit of demand sought in the submission. Our submission provides additional details. I'm happy to provide any further information that may be useful or meet with council officers to discuss our submission in more detail. The RVA has been engaging with councils across New Zealand to seek fair, equitable, proportionate and reasonable DC charging regimes for villages, and the approach set out in our submission has been largely upheld by a number of councils with high growth areas across the country, including most recently Wellington City. Another concern we have with the DC policy is that it suggests that non-residential DCs might be charged for retirement villages. The units of demand for retirement village units and aged care rooms already account for the demand generated by a retirement village. Requiring additional non-residential charges would result in overcharging, for example, the DCs around community facilities in a village. Accordingly, our submission seeks amendments to the policy to ensure that it is clear that non-residential charges do not apply to retirement villages. Finally, the RVA seeks to ensure the special assessment process is fit for purpose. As already discussed, the draft DC policy will result in disproportionate charges and will therefore require retirement village operators to rely on the special assessment process, as Ms Hodgson has explained. In our experience, special assessment processes can be time and resource intensive without providing any certainty as to the outcome. This uncertainty discourages investment in new villages, which has flow-on impacts for housing supply and affordability. The DC policy sets out relatively clear criteria for special assessments for non-residential development. Our submission seeks amendments to the DC policy to provide similar clarity for residential development. We're also concerned that the DC policy does not appropriately recognise that developers may establish community facilities as part of that development. Where developer-constructed facilities reduce demand on council facilities, in our view and our submission, DCs should be so reduced. To conclude, the amendments in the 2024 draft policy that we seek, which we seek, are set out in Appendix 1 to our written submission. I thank you for the opportunity to be heard. Welcome any questions, and as mentioned, we're happy to provide any further information, meet with council officers to discuss our submission in more detail. Madam Chair, we also are very happy to take officers and elected members on a village site tour if that would be considered useful. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So, questions, anyone?
Appear to be none. So.
Yes, Councillor Ford.
Sorry, mine was just out of curiosity. You mentioned 75-year-olds and up. The population here in Porirua is going to triple 2018 to 2048. Of that population, do you see them transitioning into your homes? Or I just think our current demographic is there's a lot of Pacific families who actually look after their own elderly. So I just wanted to know, in your stats that you have, how many of our the people in Porirua transition into the homes that you guys have?
Yeah, apparently about 29% of the over 75 population live in a village. It's, as Mr. Stevenson said, property ownership is one of the first criteria because under the current business model, residents need to have a capital sum to be able to pay the occupation right agreement to move to a village. However, we're also seeing some changes in filial responsibility in other parts of the country where younger people who might have traditionally looked after their parents are becoming a little more reluctant to do so, I think might be the best way of putting it. So we are seeing Pacifica people and others move into retirement villages in other parts of the country, and I see no reason why that shouldn't continue here.
Okay, and sorry, just one more. It was around the DC policy. You were saying something about creating your own community facilities?
Yes, by that we mean the community facilities, which would include, for example, things like a lounge, a cinema, possibly a gymnasium, occasionally a swimming pool, restaurant and catering facilities, maybe a bar, pole dancing amenities, those sorts of things.
For your residents, but
for the residents.
Not necessarily public.
Again, that will depend a bit on the retirement village itself.
Okay.
The most successful villages are those which actually have opened the doors to the wider public, and so there's a sort of two-way interaction, if you like, between our residents and the wider population, and villages which do that generally tend to be quite successful.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Councillor Hayward.
Thank you very much, John, for coming in and speaking to the submission from the association. I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to give some commentary to the demographic breakdown of those who currently utilise villages and other care facilities that are part of the organisations that your association represents. With particular regard to Porirua, how does that break down in terms of Pākehā/European New Zealander, Māori, Pacifica, our more broader populations as well? How does that work out?
Councillor, it's an incredibly good question. We do the knowledge which we do have tends to indicate that retirement villages generally across the country are fairly homogeneous in terms of its profile of the residents. We do not have a lot of Māori living in villages. We don't have a lot of Pacifica people living in villages. We are seeing increasing numbers of Asian people coming to a village. In fact, one village in Auckland has an entire wing for the local Asian community. We do see that changing over time, however, because the promise a retirement village offers is basically warm, dry, age-appropriate housing, community and new friends and activities, pathway to care if it's needed, and a high level of financial stability, financial predictability. And we think that those promises, that offer, is going to be more and more relevant for older people across all demographic.
Okay, thank you, John. I've got no questions. Sorry?
You need to put your microphone on because Josh, you're online. Sorry.
John Up obviously represents the Retirement Village Association, but that's one half of our business. We are as our submission says, we're the second largest aged care provider, and if you were to go to our facility in Whitby, we have a care home in Whitby, that has a very high percentage of Māori and Pacific Islanders that we look after.
Indeed, but that is also, as you were alluding to before in one of your previous answers, the funding, the revenue that supports that work comes from a number of sources, including central government.
A number of sources, that's correct.
Understood.
Yes.
No more questions. Thank you.
Last question. Time's up, Ross.
Sorry. A bit tongue-in-cheek here, but wouldn't it be fair to say that if I was, and I'm over 70, if I was... He's even older. If he was in a house, all right, single occupant, didn't have a car, had to access public transport or didn't move around very much, he could mount an argument for having a rates reduction along the lines that you're arguing to us?
Councillor, that's not the first time that question's been asked, and in fact, we back in the day we did actually mount a number of campaigns to argue exactly that point, but we weren't terribly successful, unfortunately.
This is a cheeky question, John, and I shouldn't ask it, but is it likely that we will get a village like they do in Hamilton where you don't lose all that money when you sell your house?
Oh, what a good question, Your Worship. The beauty of the retirement villages legislation is that it allows a high level of flexibility in the business models. And the villages which basically allow that are unit title villages. And basically the operator owns the land, the community facilities, the resident owns the bricks and mortar. The upside, and it's about the only upside of that, is that they do get to keep the capital gain when they relicense it. The many downsides basically can be summed up in the fact the resident has to pay to maintain it. And the principal reason of moving to a retirement village is to get rid of all of that.
Thank you. It was a cheeky question. I'm
That's
sorry.
right.
I do apologise, but thank you. Thank you for coming in. So if you three would like to sit back in the other seats, I'll get the officers to come forward, Zach. So it's been moved, seconded by Ross, so it's open for discussion. Who's got discussion on it? Would you like to say anything first, Zach? No? Okay. Discussion on this, councillors. Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora matua. I should start this by acknowledging the fact that we have, several retirement villages in Porirua, two of which are actually inside my ward, and I am so happy that the people who choose to live in those spaces are here in Porirua. So welcome to them all. I wouldn't want that to be seen as any reflection upon them and their consumer choices. Secondly, I'm not here to pull out, a little red book or talk about the tenets of capitalism. A company is there to make money to try and be as efficient as possible, for profit or otherwise. So I'm not here to argue the toss on that. I am mindful of the work that officers have done in trying to find an approach that takes on board the feedback from submitters within the industry and the representative association. And so I am trying to understand if there was an argument that would sustain me. I wanted to make a change to this policy in support of these submissions. The dilemma I have is kind of been alluded to by some of the questions that have come up around the table, and that there are circumstances where an individual could choose to develop a space, either as a sole individual or as part of a social and community housing project, provide services that would allow or aim for the same cohort of individuals that would also go into retirement villages and care homes as well. But under the proposed development DC's policy, they would not qualify under that. And at the same time, the demographic, homogenous, that is a very good word that John used, the homogenous nature of the retirement villages does not necessarily reflect the very diverse nature of Porirua, the kaleidoscope city. And so I'm mindful that in time, providers may choose to have more diverse offerings, and their customer base may change in time as well. But there is, for me, an issue of equity. And in trying to give my voice to the vote on this issue, I'm trying to weigh against those individuals who, because of cost or culture, choose not to utilise these services, and they are financially disadvantaged as a consequence of this. That is the dilemma I have. Now, I can't see how the arguments from the industry are sustained. At the same time, we have had workshops talking about the very issue of whether or not there should be a similar discounted regime for those in community and social housing. I understand the rationale officers and the work that they are doing behind the scenes on associated work in parallel. So I'm going to leave that there for now. Ultimately, I'm going to support the recommendation that officers have, because I know that there is other work coming up on board. I am continually going to reflect the communities in Porirua that I represent, not just those who are in our retirement villages, awesome people, all they are, but also those who will never be able to utilise those services either. And I think that's important as I reflect my entire community and the city. Kia ora.
Councillor Philo?
It's just a question, clarification regarding the non-residential facilities. Can you give a bit more context to that in terms of like what is the DC rate for a non-residential? How much more is it than a residential, and what's your thinking behind your reasoning?
Through you, Chair, if I can provide just a touch of context for why this remains in the policy. So in terms of our responsiveness as a council to retirement villages, so previously I think it was in the 2015-2018 policy, retirement villages were actually a part of our non-residential side because they didn't represent a residential service. And I think it was in 2018, prior to my time, the retirement village sector actually lobbied through consultation, and we varied it to bring it into our residential side of the policy. And then in our 2021 policy, we actually brought in lower factors. So in terms of our responsiveness, we've been pretty engaged throughout the process. In terms of the non-residential portion staying there, as the submitters have alluded to, there's actually other services that are provided by retirement villages, and because our policy isn't a one-size-fits-all, potentially if there are demand over and above what you would expect of a typical retirement village, it has been left in there to account for that, potentially for the likes of restaurants and community facilities and swimming pools. It's a portion of our policy that's never been exercised. It hasn't been exercised, though, because we actually haven't received a retirement village resource consent application in the past 3 to 4 years. So its factor is slightly higher than a residential house. What it does is it tries to draw an equivalent. So for one residential house, we say it is the same equivalent as 100 metres squared of non-residential property, and there's some categories on that. Non-residential does only pay for the core services, though, which is 3 waters and transport. It doesn't actually pay for the balances of parks and recreation, etc., etc., based on the fact that it's typically non-residential in demand and the people don't live here. So it's something that had been left in our policy to account for the fact that we can't account for every retirement village and everything that could be placed in front of us. So it was more of a protection to ensure if there was a demand placed on council services that we had the appropriate way to account for that. And that's the placeholder that's in there. But that hasn't been triggered since it was and has been in the policy. Is that clear?
Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, can you remind me, if I was to build a granny flat, say, on my property, what sort of HUI would I be paying on that?
Through you, Chair. Again, if I can provide some context on this one. So as Porirua City Council runs a very simple DC policy, we say a house is a house. So other councils have bedroom facilities, bathroom facilities. It depends typically on the resourcing they have in the particular team, knowing that the team that administers our DC policy is Matthew, who sits beside me. So we have a house as a house. If you put a granny flat or a second dwelling on the back of your property and it is considered standalone, i.e. has a kitchen and bathroom facility, then you will be charged 1 full HEU. So whether it's 5 bedrooms or 1. However, within the policy, we have the special assessment or reconsideration where we believe the demand isn't consistent with our averaging implicit, that we provide the opportunity for any applicant to come into us, provide that supporting detail and work through a process. I.e. the special assessment process is there to account for the aspects that don't fit in line with our policy. So the first assessment that will be done is you'll be charged 1 household equivalent unit. We're normally pretty proactive engaging with those that fall in those gaps to look at actually what demand is, because ultimately this falls down to the Local Government Act and underlying demand on infrastructure.
So what if they were to negotiate, would it come down to what?
It's hard to say hypothetically. So typically the argument we use is that our DC policy assumes 2.7 people live in any household. So if you build a one bedroom and it's only potential that 2 people at a maximum could be within that it is up to the applicant to make that argument there. But if you could rationally make an argument that it's a 2 bedroom and it will be somewhere between 1 and 2 people living there, then potentially you would look at a percentage of that factor. But again, it depends on that. It's a hypothetical because it would depend on the plan that's placed in front of us.
Okay. So for me, these same sort of arguments are mounted from the rural sector, from all kinds of sectors to get a discount. And I was really proud of our mayor at the local government conference when she spoke about the discrepancies between councils around the region, how we all have varying amounts and what a sensible thing it would be to actually rationalise that and have one charge. And so for me, option 3 seems to be the right option at the moment, for the time being anyway, that we stick to what you're suggesting, the status quo. Thanks.
Councillor, are we happy?
Yes, thank you. When you were talking about I'll start with, I have an 88-year-old grandmother, and I have to say the options available in our city are not really, that great. But in saying that, she did have a lot of fun at Bupa, so thank you for that. In regards to the special assessment process, would that also include the potential of discussing that with our retirement villages?
Through you, Chair. So the special assessment process is there to deal with anything that doesn't meet the averaging implicit. So in terms of the commentary that it can be long and strenuous, we've never actually exercised that part of our policy in regards to the retirement village factor. We tend to be pretty proactive in our engagement, and I say that because on the residential side, we tend to work with developers and providers to understand the demand. So the special assessment process provides an opportunity for a particular retirement village to provide us the underlying factors that relate to them. Even within the particular submissions and the information that's been provided to us, there's actually different factors used between different retirement villages. So in some ways, it's quite hard for us to account for that as an average. So we believe we have what represents an average in the industry, but should an individual developer or provider believe it isn't fit for purpose, then the special assessment process is provided to work through that. Other councils actually don't provide that as well. So that's a slight way that we can actually work with the individuals where it isn't fit for purpose.
So I'm sitting on options. Sorry, no other questions? Ross, sorry, I'll ask one last. Sorry, Ross.
Sorry, can officers tell us what the potential impact on our rates take would be if we were to accede to the requests of the people that have spoken to us today?
Through you, Chair, we looked to do a calculation like that to provide you the finances behind it. In all honesty, the difficulty in doing that was the different providers actually had different factors, and without having a live resource consent or a future lead on what the developments look like, it's hard to quantify. We do that in the residential side because we have underlying growth projections where we can look at housing. In terms of the retirement village, if you look at the 5-year program, there's potentially some coming. Like Bupa's obviously talked to the fact they're looking at that. We have limited visibility of the scale or type of retirement villages, so it was hard for us to give anything that was nothing more than a hypothetical number, and it couldn't be relied upon.
Sorry, just point of explanation there. Wouldn't this, if we were to agree to what they're proposing, wouldn't that apply to the existing villages that are here on a rates basis per year?
Sorry, through you, Chair, just to be clear, I am talking about DCs in regards to that. In terms of rates, I couldn't answer that side of the question.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, fair enough. Look, I'm not convinced, given that there are, as other people have raised, there are lots of people in the community who come round and say to us, rural people and others, I never use the library, I don't use the swimming pool. All those sorts of arguments come to us all the time. I'm not convinced that I would accede to what the retirement village people are asking us for, and I will be voting for what the officers recommend.
Thank you. Councillor Wardle?
Just a quick one. Under our current policy, how many special assessments have we been requested to have?
Through you, Chair, in regards to the retirement village side of it, none in the last at least 3 years. In terms of the residential side, I wouldn't have